Welcome to the Influential Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Duncan, and my dream is to inspire moms to pursue their goals and help them make a difference in their world. I'm a mom of 2 young boys, a wife to my high school sweetheart, and a lawyer. This show is a place to hear stories of moms working hard to have a positive influence in their profession or their community, and sometimes both, even as they juggle their responsibilities at work, at home, and to their children. You'll get tangible, practical tips for managing the chaotic world of motherhood and work. Come along as we hear these stories and feel inspired to step outside of our comfort zone as leaders and as a positive force within our communities. I believe that moms can change the world. Hey there, friends. This is Melissa Duncan, and I am doing this special bonus episode for newsletter subscribers because I thought that it would be a great way to share my story with infertility, and really just kind of give you some insight into some of the more personal parts of my own story and some personal parts of my life. So I wanted to share my story and let you know that this is something that is actually kind of still a story in progress. So when I first got married to my high school sweetheart, it was in between college and law school, and we were young and we were just really excited to become a family. We had been together for almost 6 years, and honestly, we were really ready to start a family right away, or I was. I don't think that Damon was, but we were in law school. It was the summer between college and law school, and so I was ready, but obviously the timing was not great. So we waited, and then after law school, I was still really, really, really ready. But at that point in time, we were starting a law firm, and so we agreed that that was our first child. So we spent a few years building a law practice, and then we finally agreed, okay, we have a little bit of a nest egg as far as money goes. Now let's start a family. But we never dreamed it would take as long as it did. And I know that there are so many women and families that just take so much longer than it even took us. But we decided to start trying to start a family and just assumed, okay, it might take a couple of months, but it'll probably happen right away. Well, we were wrong. So after about a year, I saw my doctor, just my regular OB, and my OBGYN, and he said, well, if it's taken a year and you haven't gotten pregnant, then let's try to see what interventions might help, because maybe we just need to find something about your cycle that is a little bit off. So I agreed and I said, let's see what we can find out. So we did some testing and we found out that my cycles were not exactly operating the way that they were supposed to, and that my ovulation in particular was just not quite doing its job. So I started on a medication called Femera. And I asked a lot of questions about this medication because I'm not huge on just popping medicine just for whatever. Even though this wasn't just whatever, I just wanted to really know what we were getting ourselves into. And my doctor assured me that multiples in pregnancy the risk was really, or I guess the odds were really low. And that for most women, they got pregnant within the first 3 months on this medication. So we agreed to start it, and month 1, nothing happened. Month 2, I thought, surely this is going to be it. This is going to be what solves our problems. Well, guess what? Month 2, still not pregnant. And so we went into month 3, and I really felt a lot of pressure because he had said that after 3 months on this medication, if I was not pregnant, then we would start increasing our interventions. So away we go into month 3, and the way that this medicine works is you take it at certain points in your cycle, and then you go in to see if your levels are at a certain number where there would be any chance of you having a baby or conceiving that month. And I went in on a Friday. I remember we were headed out of town. And I went in and they tested my numbers, and they called me back while we were on our way out of town. And they said, your numbers are so low, there's no way you would be pregnant this month. So we enjoyed our weekend away with friends. But when we got back on Sunday, there were some things that I knew were going on that were a little out of the ordinary. So I took a test, and lo and behold, it was positive. And you could have just knocked me over right then and there. So we were really surprised, needless to say, after what we had been told at the doctor's office. And on Monday morning, I called the doctor and I said, I'm pregnant according to this test that I took. And of course, I had taken like 7 tests at home. And they said, are you sure? Because your chart says that's probably not possible. And I said, well, I am. Or at least all these, grocery store tests are telling me that I am. So after I came in for confirmation, which I was, then we waited and, had a few check-ins, but I had my first ultrasound at 8 weeks. And we found out there that I had actually gotten pregnant with twins, but I had lost one around 6 weeks. And so Brooks is our child from that pregnancy. And losing one when you're pregnant with another is really interesting because apparently the one that passed away just kind of dissolves into the pregnancy, which is a really kind of strange thing to hear about. But I was really curious in that moment, so I'm just kind of letting you all know how that works. And then we had Brooks, we were really excited. And when Brooks was 2 years old, we decided that we would start trying again. And we decided to start then because we knew that I wasn't getting any younger. And we knew that it would probably take a while. And guess what? The second month we were trying, I got pregnant with Hayes. And that was really kind of uneventful. It was just like, okay, here we go. And so Hayes was born, and I was not as ready as fast for the third baby. But I think I was just kind of ready to enjoy just, having 2 at the ages that they were. But in 2018, we started trying for number 3, and it only took about 3 months for me to get pregnant. Unfortunately, as many of you already know, that pregnancy actually ended up being an ectopic pregnancy. And what that means is that the embryo has implanted in the fallopian tube instead of in the uterus. And it's very dangerous to the mother because the fallopian tube can rupture and cause internal bleeding, which is actually what happened to me. So I was very early along. I was only about 4 weeks and a few days when I found out that I was pregnant. And 48 hours later, which is just the craziest thing, I started having this really terrible pain in my side. And of course, I went to Google and found out that, guess what? I had all the symptoms for an ectopic pregnancy. So I immediately rushed over to the women's hospital here in our city, and they were able to confirm that that's what it was going on, and I was bleeding internally. So we had to do a very quick surgery to resolve this very serious medical condition that I was having, given that the fallopian tube had ruptured. So that was really sad because it didn't really register with me that I was pregnant at all until I wasn't pregnant anymore. And on top of that, I'm recovering from a major surgery. I'm not feeling well generally. My hormones are crashing. So that was a pretty hard time. I did not know that there actually are risk factors for ectopic pregnancies. Believe it or not, I didn't have any of the risk factors. So it's just kind of we don't know why this happened. We can't say that it won't happen again. But I think to make things even a little more scary is that I was told that once you have had an ectopic pregnancy, then that is a risk factor going forward. So they say that now I actually do have a 10 to 15% chance of having another ectopic in my remaining fallopian tube. So we're still praying about what to do next and what that process might look like going forward, just because it was so scary. If someone has an ectopic pregnancy and it does not rupture, so let's say that it is caught before the fallopian tube ruptures, there is a medication that the person can take to essentially dissolve the pregnancy and save the fallopian tube. But unfortunately, mine had already ruptured by the time we kind of realized what was going on. So mine ruptured very, very early, much earlier than they usually do. And so that's another thing that they can't really figure out why it happened that way. But, those are just things that we'll never know the answer to. So I hope that this has been a little bit helpful. As you can see, I'm kind of leaving this with a we don't know what's next kind of ending, but that's because that's where we are. We're praying about what to do next and don't really know what that looks like. So in a way, I'm still kind of in my infertility journey, having had a pregnancy that took a long time, a pregnancy that was just like easy, no issues, super easy delivery, super easy recovery. And then now this third one was just really scary and very sad because we, had a lot to process after that ectopic pregnancy. I would love to hear from you if you've had an ectopic pregnancy. I would love to connect with you. I know that it's not super common and it's pretty rare. So hearing of other women who have experienced that, it's just helpful to, hear stories, especially if you've had a successful pregnancy afterwards. I would love to hear about that. And just know that if this is part of your story, if any of this, is part of your story, I am thinking of you and praying that you will feel peace and that you'll be able to wake up each day knowing that it's a new day and that the Lord knows all of the plans that are in your future. So thanks for tuning in. If you want to get future newsletters and you just happened upon this episode, but you want to get on the newsletter list, then just go over to melissaduncan.com/join. And of course, you can check out all of my regular podcast episodes, which are interviews for the most part, at www.melissaduncan.com/podcast. Or you can search for Influential Motherhood, which is the name of the podcast, in Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you listen to your favorite podcast. Thanks so much, and I will catch you next week. Thanks for tuning in for another inspiring episode of the Influential Motherhood podcast. Be sure to follow my own journey in motherhood and work at Melissa Duncan JD on Instagram, and follow the behind the scenes of the podcast at Influential Motherhood on Instagram and Facebook. If you're enjoying the Influential Motherhood podcast, please take a second to leave a rating or review in iTunes. It is how you can help other moms find the show so they can be inspired by these stories. See you next week.